All right, so can you all see my screen well?
We can indeed, thank you.
Great, I succeeded. Okay, okay, it's a bit strange to present at a conference while sitting at my home office, but try to make it work. So, first I'll talk a bit about the context of the work that I'm going to present. I work at the Sustainable Minerals Institute, which is really an institute at the University of Queensland that is really focused on mining, all sorts of aspects of mining. So we have two social centers, social aspects and health and safety. We have environment center, we have a water center, and we have production centers, which include geology, metallurgy, and also economic aspects. So it's really like a whole range of areas of expertise at the institute. And one of the key initiatives these recent years to try and increase the multidisciplinary collaboration within the institute was to create the cross-cutting programs. And I was one of the first postdocs to be enrolled as one of the main cross-cutting programs, which is the complex orebodies program. So I'll talk a bit about what complex orebodies are, obviously, but you can see from the list of people that I have collaborated with for the past couple of years that it's really people from all of the centers. So Rick Valenta is the program director. He's also director of one of the production centers. There is, of course, Diana Kemp and John Owen from my center, which is the Center for Social Responsibility in Mining. Diana Kemp being the director of that center. There is Glenn Corder, who was the acting director of the Environment Center, Claire Coate, who's now the director of the Water Center, and other colleagues that have helped me along the way. So, so that's the background. So what is a complex orebody? So it has, of course, to do with the geological aspects and the mineralogy. Can be difficulties with low grades or with economics, but that was not really the point of my own project. My own project was to look at the locations of these ore bodies and look at a whole range of other aspects. And it's really the idea of situated risk based on the location of the ore bodies. So investors call it ESG risks. We like the term source risks as well, as source of the supply chain, and the idea of really situated risks. So just in case you guys don't know much about it, but I'm sure that you do, just picked up a few quotes from the news. What are ESG risks? So Zambian pollution lawsuit, so pollution lawsuit in Zambia. Production disrupted by a general strike in Chile, a 2-month road blockade in Las Bambas in Peru. And there is also lots of news about how the investor community is paying attention to these events. So the London Metal Exchange, with a planning a ban on cobalt said to be tainted by human rights abuse. There was environmental damage caused at Grasberg mine in Indonesia, and Rio Tinto had to pull out of this mine due to pressure from Norway. And of course, you probably heard about the Church of England letters to mining companies to ask for disclosures of data on their tailings dam after the catastrophic tailings dams failures in Brazil. So that's just a few examples to give you some context. At the beginning of this project, we also had a quick look at the top 40 undeveloped copper ore bodies, so ore bodies that are the largest in the world in terms of copper reserves. And we looked at evidence of delays, so acknowledged by stakeholders around the company. And we found that 17 of them had significant delays, so delays that were clearly unplanned and several years. and we looked at the contribution of ESG factors to this delay. So, of course, it's based on disclosure, what is disclosed, and you probably know it's probably very hard to know what's actually happening at the site, but this is based on a desktop study. So 11 of the 40 cases, it sounded like ESG risk were the main reason for the delay. Second aspect that we looked at is the presence of ESG complexity. So we mean the tendency of ESG factors to co-occur at the same place. So having environmental issues coupled with social aspects or even political problems. And there was a tendency of ESG risks to co-occur. So again, this is not representative of all orebodies in the world, but it gives us some ideas that yes, there is ESG risks are able to contribute to significant delays and sometimes even compromise mining projects. And also there is the idea of complexity of when there is that entanglement between different ESG factors, it adds to the complexity and it can even probably contribute even more to delays. So now I want to talk about one of the papers that we published a few months ago now. And it's a methodology paper. So I'm going to talk a bit more about methodology, but I have a couple of slides at the end where I show some results as well. I also put the title of the paper at the end of this presentation. So you're welcome to contact me if you want to have access to the full text. I'm happy to share it. So this methodology paper, we wanted to see how our idea of source risks was located compared to well-established methodologies. And we had the idea, the methodology, well-known methodology of critical materials and critical metals. And that aspect was a methodology that was quite close to what we were thinking, but not quite. So criticality is often two sets of factors. Is the idea of supply risk, so the risk of having a supply disruption at a large scale, and also the vulnerability to supply disruption, which is how much you need that particular metal, for example, for consumer purposes. The problem with these methodologies is the data is often national level. So we missed that granularity that we wanted to have. We wanted to really have an idea of the ore body level. The second type of methodology was the whole idea of availability and accessibility. And there is a lot of literature out there that are talking about, for example, the geological aspect, the issue of potential resource depletion, the technical issues linked to having low grades ore bodies. And often in this literature, they mention ESG risks. They say that they contribute, but I haven't seen any methodology really developed on quantifying them at global scale. So our methodology is actually located in between. It has the granularity of the discussions on availability and accessibility that are very mining focused, but it has also a bit of the criticality aspect because it's quite close to supply risk, but it's really at the source of the supply. So this is where it was located. So the methodology itself uses a lot of data. We have access to the S&P Global Market Intelligence database, which has tens of thousands of mining projects with their location, the commodities that are mined, the size, the grades, average grades, the reserves and resources. And on the other side, we have a whole lot of ESG indicators that we can find online. There are some water risk indicators. There is for example, the Human Development Index, all of these available data sets and indexes that we can find online. And what we did is we selected some of them that were relevant, and we did this spatial overlay, which really looks like this. It's various different maps that we overlay And on the one side, we have points of mining projects, and on the other side, we have a whole lot of different indicators that we look at. So I won't go into the details of this. There has been a lot of discussion on which dimensions we should be considering, what is the most relevant to mining, and even more discussions on what are the different indicators that can fit in each of the categories. I very much wanted to have a perfect set with the perfect data, but of course there is always, when you look at global level data, you have issues of resolution, incomplete data sets. You want to find reliable data, of course, and you want to represent something that is meaningful for the purpose of your study. So considering all this, we couldn't, I don't think there is one perfect set of indicators, but we have a whole lot of indicators that we can shape and twist depending on the topic of the study that we want to look at. So this is in no way a final set, but we always walk around these categories that you can see here. And so, yeah, I promised some results. So this is still from the same paper. So we applied this methodology first to the three major metals, iron, copper, and bauxite. And we were still always looking at this idea of co-occurring risk. So you see there's the y-axis is the number of co-occurrent risks. So in the previous slide, there was 7 risks. So the co-occurrence can be between 0 and 7 risks happening, co-occurring at the same place. And we can compare commodities based on this using the S&P data. And so with this first study, we could compare these 3 commodities, and you can see that they have different shapes. That iron has a more convex type of curve, bauxite is clearly more concave, and copper is a bit in between. So with this methodology, with the set of projects that we had, we can say, okay, the propensity of complex ore bodies is more important for bauxite than it is for iron, and copper is in between. So that was a first look at what the data can do and what kind of results we can get. And we can say that this can contribute to supply risk, and maybe in that case, bauxite is maybe a metal of concern. And there are many other ways to look at this data, and we've had quite a few studies since that time. And also there is, well, that's another way to look at it as a map with points with different, and try to localize the geography of ESG complexity. So that's another way to look at it. So I will just conclude here. I think this methodology gives us really some tools to look at aspects that we were not able to quantify before, and to really look at the source level constraints when it comes to supply risks. It's still an evolving methodology, and we are not done working with it, but yeah, I'll be happy to take some questions now. And here is so the second paper is the one I presented today. We have a previous paper also that we published last year. And again, yes, if you want to have access to these papers, the first one is open access, so you will be able to access it by yourself, but the second one is not. So just feel free to send me an email and I can send you a copy. That's it.
Brilliant, thank you so much, Eleonore. And you can see us / imagine that fantastic round of applause going on behind those muted microphones. That was absolutely brilliant, and there's some really good chatter going on both in chat and through some of the other channels as well. Just with regards to those graphs that you showed with regards to the iron, the copper, and then the bauxite, i.e. I guess aluminium, with regards to what most people will know the output from bauxite being, was that data, was that coming from existing mines, or did it include projects that are on the table as well?
That's a good question. I forgot to mention that. So for this study, we only looked at undeveloped mining projects. So we stopped. So the S&P database has the different stages of development for each mining project. So we looked at ones that were in past very early stage of exploration. So let's say from advanced exploration to pre-production. So it was kind of forward-looking, thinking, okay, this is probably the set of mining projects that we can have in the future. We didn't look at operating mines for this paper.
Okay, no, that's really interesting. And so from those graphs as well, I mean, would a very high level summary be that we think that going forwards, it's going to be more difficult to guarantee those bauxite projects compared to those iron projects, or am I misinterpreting those graphs?
Yes, so we can think that there is a higher ESG complexity for the whole set of bauxite projects. So if this theory works out, then it means that, yeah, there can be more problems with taking these ore bodies into production.
And are there any specific reasons that you want to leave us with regards to why bauxite might be so difficult?
If I remember correctly, so it's in the paper as well, we decompose each of the risk categories. If I remember correctly, there was a lot of complexity around land uses. So for some reason around bauxite ore bodies, we had a lot of cropland, pasture land, forests, and so it sounded like, and also population density.
Okay, brilliant. Those pesky people living on top or nearby to where all of those beautiful ore bodies are. Does that sound like a geologist speaking? Brilliant. So thank you so much, Eleanor. That was absolutely brilliant and a fantastic way to kick off today's first session. So again, another round of applause for the lovely Eleanor, and thank you for dialing in so late from Brisbane.